All right, welcome to the Paladin Strategies podcast, Paladin Strategies Champions for a Cause, and I'm excited about today's guest, Brad. What do you think about it?
Well, when NIL started and we started talking about NIL and working with our champions, which are female athletes and whatnot, one of the best places for information is On3.
Oh, yeah.
Just because they have the valuation of student athletes and stuff, and the guest today is got his pulse on that, and we're going to talk to him about it. I'm excited about that, and they've done some new stuff with some women valuations and stuff like that, and so I'm just really excited to see where we go with this.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that was interesting to me, and it'll be great to talk about, is that, as we started getting things rolling, you were very big and mentioned to me multiple times, like, man, you got to check out On3. You got to check out this On3 stuff. And so, at first I was kind of like, what's On3? Yeah. And so then I started looking at it a little bit more and realized that, these guys got their finger on the pulse of
and I'm
not just NIL, but recruiting and all that stuff.
Everything.
So,
and I'm a stat geek, so you can just go there and just be like, that guy's worth that much? Ooh, okay. Yeah, and all this different stuff. And so I'm excited to do it for women stuff too.
Absolutely. Real quick, want to give a shout out to Eastus Media. We're broadcasting from Eastus Media Podcast Center here in Pratt, Kansas. So Cody Eastus with the Cody Eastus Podcast. Check him out. If you get a chance or you have any podcast needs, then check out Eastus Media. He does a cool thing that I want to mention real quick as we get going, that he does a really cool thing that he's marketing right now of he will take a he had a family that came in and they had, like the mother or the grandmother that was pretty close to passing away, and they brought him in and they did a podcast to just record it with the memories and the video cast, and then now they have that forever. So if you guys have any podcast needs or anything like that, again, make sure and check out Eastus Media. He can hook you up with any of your needs there. So with that, let us go ahead and bring in our guest today. And our guest is Jeremy Crabtree from On3. He's a senior editor there. How are you, Jeremy?
I'm doing great. How are you guys doing this afternoon?
Oh, I think we're doing excellent.
It's a little cold.
I don't want to. I don't know
what it's like up there. But
if Brad seems chippy at all today, he had a bad night at basketball last night. So
it was not a good day. It was not a good day.
Yeah, it happens. So, Jeremy, tell everybody a little bit about you, just real quick, kind of a background and kind of your role at On3.
Yeah, no, I'm a senior editor at On3 and been with the company since we launched last summer. And where do I go? I mean, I've been doing college sports now for 25 plus years. I'm a Kansas City native, went to school at K-State. Don't hold that against me or anything like that. But I went to school at K-State, immediately went to work right out of school at the Kansas City Star. And then from there, I kind of found my way into covering college football recruiting. It was kind of my way to be different than a lot of the other people in this space back then, and got called up within a year and a half to go be a part of some company called Rivals.com.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if you've ever heard of them before, but was employee number 2 at the original Rivals.com. We helped build that sucker up to where we sold it to Yahoo, stayed on at Yahoo for a little while, but then decided, I wanted to try something different. And ESPN came knocking at my door. So I went and worked at ESPN for 5 glorious years until they decided that they didn't want to cover college sports online anymore. So went away from that and spent 2 years in local news media here in Kansas City covering everything from a digital standpoint at KNBC 9 News, but then got back into the world of college sports at On3 and have gravitated heavily over the last year and a half since NIL emerged as a central factor in college sports. That's become my beat. So I've covered a little bit of everything over the last 25 years, but I'm all in on the NIL world right now.
Awesome. Well, we're definitely glad to have you on today and to chat a little bit more about just NIL overall and how that goes, and because it's just, I mean, we've talked about it. It's just the Wild West, man. Nobody knows what's going on sometimes, and and it's just crazy right now.
Yeah, it is. It touches everything. It touches recruiting in every sport, especially the big ones: college football, college basketball, women's basketball, volleyball. It also touches the transfer portal. Let's be honest. The transfer portal is going to essentially evolve into free agency because of NIL, and we've got written rather extensively about that at On3, including a great story yesterday that you can find on the front page of On3 that dives into about NIL. But then also, NIL is also about roster maintenance. Let's be honest. It's also about roster maintenance. It's about making sure that your talented players are sticking around on campus, not getting lured away to go hop in the transfer portal and go someplace else. So it's something that encompasses everything in college sports. And I kind of hearken it back to my days of covering recruiting. When we first started covering recruiting, it was, again, you mentioned the Wild Wild West. It was kind of the Wild Wild West because it was uncharted territory. No one really had covered the space. No one knew what to think of this space. And the NIL has been very much like that. So we've been kind of rewriting the playbook every single day, and just diving in from a content standpoint, but also with some of the tools. I'm sure that you will want to talk a little bit about the NIL valuations, the NIL rankings, the On3 NIL 100. I mean, there's just a lot of different tools that we've developed that I think are going to help everybody out, for not just people like you that are involved with collectives, but then also the student athletes. That's going to be something we're really working hard toward.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I thought, you're talking about some of the articles and stuff like that. I thought one of the ones that recently came out, maybe the one you were talking about yesterday, but I thought it was interesting how one of them tied to the coaching carousel. To NIL as well. Yeah. So, I mean, it's not just the athlete, the free agency per se on the athlete side, but I thought that was very interesting, talking about the coaching carousel piece a little bit. And so you want to just give a little description of that, or kind of thought behind how that work affects it?
No question. I mean, if you're a coach looking to take a head coaching job right now, to move from one place to another, or to move from an assistant job to a head coaching job, you want to make sure that you can go into a situation where you can win. I mean, and let's be honest. You're retained on whether or not you win games or lose games. And if you win more games, you're going to stick around longer.
Yeah.
And to win games now, again, ties back to what we talked about a second ago: success in recruiting, success in the transfer portal, and success in roster maintenance. And all of those things cannot be done without a good NIL foundation at a program, whether it's through help from the school itself doing their in-house things, whether it's booster-led collectives, or being able to, let's be honest, the pay-for-play deals that are done by a lot of individual business entities. So there's all those things. So if you're a head coach considering to take a job, and this school over here has great facilities, a great recruiting base, but a crappy NIL situation, but then this school over here has all of those things and a great NIL foundation, you're going to go take the job where you have the great NIL foundation. It's just the reality of how things are now.
I agree. And, being a collective that right now is also working with the Lady Shock Squad, which is Wichita State women, and I'm not going to get too much into it because I don't know enough to talk about it, but I know that we have a change in ADs. Kevin Saul came in, and it was NIL related. That they were late to the table a little bit, because the previous guy was kind of like, well, let's wait and see. And how many started to transfer out of the
a lot?
Like
they had
nine
a lot.
Guys were like, we're out of here. You don't have anything for us, so we're gonna go check the portal. Kevin Saul came in, who plug for Kevin. He's phenomenal.
Yeah, he's been great
to work with. And he's been very proactive in working with us too. So we've seen it right here on the local level that that Wichita State was forward thinking enough to realize that, man, this isn't working. We got to make a change. Or we're going to fall behind.
Well, also it's easier now to be more involved with the NCAA. Late in October, again, clarified their clarification of the interim NIL rules, where allows the administrators and school officials to openly campaign for NIL and for NIL boosters and NIL collectives. So that certainly opened the door up, and we've seen a fast forward with a lot of those administrators and coaches supporting booster-led collectives. But you're right about the Wichita State thing. That thing, being up here in Kansas City, we were seeing what was going on successfully at K-State. We were seeing what's going on at KU. So we know that it can be done in the state of Kansas, and it was a little bit, pardon the phrase of term, shocking to see how far behind that Wichita State was from that standpoint, with all the success that they've had on the hardwood.
Oh,
so
especially,
and so it made sense. It made sense for somebody to come in and fully embrace it, and it has been night and day, at least from my outside looking in standpoint, night and day difference in how things are going down there from an NIL standpoint.
Very
yeah,
cool.
it's
Very
that.
cool.
Yeah, and so a couple of things I want to hit on first. Number one, I'm gonna change briefly the topic because Jeremy, you mentioned that you're a K-State guy, and so kudos to the Lady Wildcats. Like, they pulled off the upset last night over number 4 Iowa.
Yeah. That was the
So
game, man.
people didn't think that was going to be close because K-State's obviously without probably their best player from last year, and
One of the best players in the country.
Yeah.
Yes,
and
no
so I mean they won that, and so that was awesome. And then I want to give a shout out to both of those teams as well. Obviously, people from our area, we're recording this out of Pratt, which is right down the road from Nickerson, Kansas, where Ava Jones is from, and so they both teams came together and wore shirts in honor of Ava, and Iowa, obviously went ahead and honored her scholarship, and so cool just to see all of that, and then in the end to see the Wildcats get the win over a high-ranked team. So I just wanted to throw that in there. But so obviously there's going to be some people that are listening in. We're 11 minutes in, and you've heard that term NIL dropped a lot, and so there's some people that we still find today that are like, well, I don't even know what that is, and there's collectives and stuff trying to go away from using NIL and just saying name, image, and likeness. So for the people that may not know, can you give us just a quick overview of what actually is NIL and how that affects sports?
No, I mean it's NIL stands essentially for name, image, and likeness, and for years and years and years, decades, college student athletes were not able to, because of the NCAA rules, amateurism rules, were not able to profit off of their name, image, and likeness. On the flip side, they've seen schools and the NCAA and the college football playoff and all these entities make millions and billions of dollars off of their name, image, and likeness, whether it's jersey sales, whether it's plastering them in ads. And there just was no way for student athletes to truly market themselves while they're still a student athlete. I mean, and then the Supreme Court in 2020 kind of revamped the game a little bit. They came out and against NCAA. And then the NCAA had to update its, actually create a policy from its from scratch, and it was, let's be honest, it was full of holes, and it's allowed no enforcement. So we're kind of in the world of the wild west. But then you have the other angle of it, where you have states making their own NIL legislation, and different states have different rules. So there's no uniform playing ground that we're working with here, and that's why there's some people trying to push for federal legislation. And then even high school kids in some states, Kansas being one of them, can profit off their name, image, and likeness. So it's just it's a really confusing time. But I guess in hindsight, to me, looking at it from a student standpoint, I am ecstatic that these student athletes are finally able to make money off their name and image, and their likeness, get some of the stuff that they deserve to do. It's fun to watch the student athletes involved in these commercials. I was watching NCAA soccer last night, and Suni Lee, Olympic gold medalist who never would have ever gone to college before, was in a commercial for Amazon, and she's able to get paid for that. So we're just in a new world now, and I know some people are want to bury their head in the sand and say, well, this is not right. It's changed the game, and college sports are never going to be the same. They're right about that. But for years and years and years and decades now, it's been these student athletes have had their, have been taken advantage of. So this is an opportunity for them to, do what they can to make some money while they can, because we know there's no sure thing. A lot of these, especially on the female side of things, they're not going to ever get huge paydays, even if they go to the WNBA or play on the women's national soccer team. That's still not life-changing money.
Yeah.
But you can potentially make some life-changing money through NIL now.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so a couple of things that you hit on that I thought were interesting and important in that piece of it was one. So I was one of those people that was slow to the game, right? And by that I mean, like, I was like, man, what are you talking about? They need to get paid money. Like, when I went to Wichita State and one of the basketball players, Rob Campman, him and I would have this conversation years ago, and Rob would be like, yeah, we need to be paid some money, and I'm like, what are you talking about, dude? Like, you're getting a free education, or like Bob Stoops said years ago. Bob Stoops is like, dude, people at OU football are getting a free $40,000 a year education. They have the best health care. Like, if I blow my ACL out and I ain't in surgery tomorrow and I don't have people rehabbing me every day, they get the best nutritionist. They get all of these things that, you know what, you're right. And those were the things that I used to be like, yeah, they're getting all of those things. Well, number one, that's not every athlete at the college. That's just some of the bigger programs. But number two, the part that you don't really think about is, okay, that's great. You're giving them all of that to play on that football team. Yep. But then, they're turning around, and you would see athletes still in commercials, and they weren't getting paid anything for it. You see jersey sales going on. Yep. You see, events and appearances where the athletes are being, hey, you got to go to this event, and they're not being paid for that. And so when you really start looking at the big picture, that's when I kind of went like, oh yeah, now I kind of get it. Yep. And understand some of that piece. But
and then the draconian method of enforcement of it. Like this guy, one of the assistant coaches paid for their pizza one night.
Yeah.
And then they're just like dropping the hammer. And you're like, what?
I have twins in college, and every time I'm around the college, like, I try and take them, and if there's other kids, I'm like, let's go eat. I'll pay for it. You guys are college kids, and you can't do that.
No.
The other thing you mentioned at the end that I thought was really interesting, especially on the female side. So one of our Lady Shock Squad board members is Sarah Lundgren. Walkup is her married name, Sarah Walkup, and Sarah Lundgren played at Wichita State. Yep. Was an MVC Conference Player of the Year twice. She played a little bit overseas in volleyball. She played a little bit overseas professionally, but she made that comment when we were talking to her about what we were doing. Mm-hmm. She's like, man, if this was available when I was in college, I would have done everything I could to capitalize on it, and it would have kept me from having to go overseas to try and make any money playing volleyball. So it's interesting to see it all, starting to change. And today it's just, it's amazing to watch a lot of it, but it's still like, Brad and I sit here all the time, and we're like, we had a situation, and you may know the answer to this. So we have the Lady Shock Squad, right? Yeah. And so we have athletes from Wichita State that are coming into that, and we're working on some other stuff. And so we have shirts for the athletes, and then we have our Lady Shock Squad shirts. And so, when we go to, we have season tickets to basketball and whatever. And so when we go to games, we wear our Lady Shock Squad shirts and try and promote that within the arena. Yep. But Brad made the comment one day. He's like, hey, we should give Ella's parents a shirt. They go to the games. They could wear a shirt. And my question right back to him was, can we do that? Yeah. Can we give Ella's parents, hey, Ella's parents, here's a free Lady Shock Squad shirt to wear at the games? Can we do that or not?
Right.
And so we haven't done it because
we don't want to get Ella in trouble.
No. I'm assuming Ella's a student athlete already on the
she's on the basketball team.
Yeah.
I would think that I would think that it'd be fine, but that's certainly when you would which is what a whole nother angle of this is make compliance officials at these universities their jobs infinitely more complicated than what they ever were before, because the reporting rules are so different. I mean, if you do give Ella's mom and dad a T-shirt or something, does Ella then have to report that to the compliance? So it is crazy to think of all the different types of things that this NIL touches.
And the interesting thing is, you mentioned compliance. We've talked with a couple different colleges, and we've reached out to, and because the Paladin Strategies is kind of the umbrella company over Lady Shock Squad, and we're looking at a couple other things too. But each compliance person is different. You know, there's some that want to, like, as soon as you're giving them a deal, we'd like to see it to make sure that it's not going to break some type of rule. And then you got others that are like, okay, yeah, do the deal and everything.
Just
and then
report it.
And then report it and show us what it is and show that it was quid pro quo, that they actually did something and fair market value and all, which we can get into fair market value. That's hilarious. So, yeah. And, you know, what's fair market value? Is it $500,000 for a men's basketball player to come to someone's birthday party?
We had a coach. We sat in on a teleconference where they had boosters on, and that was something that was relayed from the coach was, you know, if you want to pay a basketball player $500,000 to go to a birthday party,
it was not Wichita State.
That's fair market value, whatever you're willing to pay. And the other thing that he stressed was that we can't promise anything to an athlete that we're recruiting, but we can share with them what the other ones had. So if everybody on the basketball team had a car last year, then we can tell recruits that, hey, everybody last year had a car. We can't promise you a car, but they all had them last year.
Yeah. I think that's the one thing you right there is something that is. I've been talking to a lot of coaches and how they are handling NIL from a pitch standpoint. And
right.
Oh yeah.
Let's be honest. We know pay for play is happening, and we know that boosters and you know, some collectives and are you know, bending the rules to do whatever they can to help their school acquire talent.
Right.
From a coaching standpoint, the way that we are kind of generally seeing it is much like what you said there. We're seeing a lot of the coaches using it as part of their recruiting pitch. We're saying, listen, I talked to a Big 12 coach yesterday. He told me this. He goes, this is how we're saying it. I can't personally promise you the fun, his words, funny money that some of the other schools are. But if you come here, this is what you should be able to earn. We've had student athletes get these types of deals, make this amount of money, drive this types of cars. So it's become part of the pitch. It's become part of the PowerPoint when these coaches are sitting down with these men and women and their families in their living rooms. It's part of the PowerPoint presentation now, where they're saying this is the NIL, or even involved in their facility itself. I mean, a great picture surfaced yesterday or on Wednesday on social media of what Ohio State football is doing now, and it's right in front of their entrance. You walk in, they have all their successes they've had from NFL players, wins and losses. But then there's a whole section there that talks about these are the NIL deals that our student athletes have executed. So it certainly has become a big part of the pitch from a coaching standpoint.
Wow. And I think that's why, like, as much as, and I'm not speaking for Brad on this by any means, as much as we support the whole NIL piece, I think that's, you know, just watching it and seeing some of that, it's really impacted the vision of our company as we dive into this. And part of the big reason that we went the female route one is we felt that they were underrepresented. Obviously, most of the money and most of what we see in media and this and that is men's football and men's basketball. And that's where a lot of it's going to. And so, or at least in the beginning, that's where we saw. But we think there's a switch now. We really do. Yeah. But, you know, globally, those are the things that we talk about when we're talking about our company is, man, we don't want to do anything to affect eligibility. We don't even want to have the question of, is it going to affect eligibility? Right. We don't want to do anything that is physically written down. So the whole recruiting and using it in recruiting and this and that, we want zero part of, you know, like we don't want to talk to anybody that you're recruiting, or we don't want you. Right. I mean, you can tell them that, hey, we have the Ladies Shock Squad and this is great. But at the end of the day, for us, it's really about, and I hate to use those words, but, you know, integrity and ethics and morals, right? Like we know what the intent is, we feel like, and we feel like the intent is for if Pizza Ranch in Wichita wants to do some commercials and advertise with some of the girls at Wichita State, then they should be able to be compensated for that, for their name, image, and likeness and helping Pizza Ranch. And we get that that's what it's for. And we've been, I mean, I'm not knocking dudes. I'm a dude, but it's been very, not enlightening, but very, heartfelt, I think, working with the female athletes, because what we hear from most of the ones that we've talked with that aren't even all just from Wichita State is there's a reason they picked that school, and consistently we hear words like family. And the coaches, it's amazing coaches who I can tell truly care about me, and we hear them say things like, I want to make a difference in the community. I want to, I don't have to be paid for everything I do, but I want to make a difference. If I can make a difference and improve lives, and we see that their interaction is more, we see that their social engagement on social media is better. And so we feel like there's a switch that's going to slowly start happening from a marketing standpoint. Are you guys seeing that as well with the stuff you're seeing on NIL, that the women's side is starting to increase and there's a little bit of a transition to that?
Oh yeah, no. I mean, we wouldn't have pivoted into making it a big part of our business if it wasn't.
Sure,
I mean, we just recently unveiled a whole new set of the On3 database and the On3 NIL tools, where it is very female forward. Where we've launched the On3 NIL 100 for female for women student athletes, and that is the On3 NIL 100 is a ranking of the top 100 student athletes, regardless of sports, high school and college, but by women ranked from 1 to 100 on their NIL valuation. And we can go into that here in just a minute, but certainly we have found that women's college basketball was third amongst NIL compensated sports in its first year. 12.6%, I believe, is the number. But then if you look overall, 6 women's sports made the top 10 list for the NIL compensated sports. Women's basketball, volleyball, and softball, all things near and dear to your guys' hearts down there, beat out baseball for the third most profitable men's sport. So we're seeing major sponsors dive in with like Nike and Adidas. And then you hit on something right there. The social media engagement. Female student athletes are so much more engaging to their audience than the men's side, and I don't know why, but they certainly so. But you can just look at the numbers. You can look and see the millions and millions of followers. I mean, heck, I found a student athlete at a small D2 school, and I entered her into our database yesterday. She had 250,000 Instagram followers.
Wow.
And a lot of them were from people inside of her community there in that city, in that school. So certainly there is an appetite for to work from an NIL standpoint, from a female standpoint. And as a girl dad of 4 girls and 3 student athletes, 1 girl that just signed down there in Newman, I'm absolutely just ecstatic to see that we're seeing the support of female student athletes.
Right.
Awesome.
And I need you to scream it from the back that the social, for all the people who are still not paying attention, because Chad and I talk about this, and we talked about this months ago, that we were, and I'm, like I said, I'm an analytics geek. I will just sit and look at numbers. I think it's the coaching background in me, and I will sit there, and I kept on telling him, I'm telling you what, women are going to catch up. Women are going to catch up. I mean, the huge deals are always going to be in football. I get that. Yeah. The huge deals. USC's quarterback is always going to be a multimillionaire. Ohio State's, all that type of stuff. Alabama's something. I get that. But as a whole, women are catching up.
Yeah.
And so people need to hear.
Well, and they're also, they have an appetite for a lot of these female student athletes have an appetite for the business side of things. They've been very aggressive in opening up their own business relationships, whether it's through Amazon, whether it's through merchandise types of deals. So, and just, I mean, yes, everybody knows about the Livy Dunns and the Sunny Lees in their 8 and 3.5 million followers. But if you just keep going down the list and you just see hundreds and hundreds of female student athletes that have 100K plus social media followers. Right. That's if I'm a business, I'm looking at that and say, a captive audience for me to go try to target right there.
I think the other thing that
women support women. And women support women.
They do.
So
they do.
Go.
Yeah.
Right,
I think the other thing that I just realized just in that last 2 minutes of conversation is, do you think that part of the reason that females are so that these female athletes are so good with their social media and the engagement and all of those things. Do you think some of that is on the male side, especially at D1, right? Like the goal is I'm going to go to pros. I'm going to play pro football. I'm going to play pro basketball. I've got this avenue to potentially make millions. But on the female side, they don't. On the female side, I think a lot of them, at least some that we've talked to, have talked about, you know, what I'm going to do when I get done playing college sports. And we have one, Sydney McKinney, and even Addie Barnard, right? Sydney McKinney led the NCAA in batting average last year, a two-time All-American. Addie Barnard set the NCAA record in home runs per game last year, hit 33 in 52 games, All-American.
Everyone thinks about Jocelyn Allo. And
who's great, but those two girls are at Wichita State, and in talking with both of them, I've point blank asked them both, hey, what are the chances that you're going to go in pro softball? And both of them have said, you know, I'll entertain it. It's interesting, but I don't know if I will or not, because Sid wants to be a Title IX attorney, and Addie wants to be an anesthesiologist. And so they love playing the sport, but they don't know if they're going to go pro or not, because in their minds, it's fun, but it may not be financially beneficial to me, and it, you know, I may just want to go ahead and go into my career path. So do you think that has something to do with some of that?
Yeah, no, it certainly does. And when we begin to report and talk with a lot of these female student athletes, and we'll do more of that moving forward. But a lot of that, one thing I did pick up, and I think you're smart to pick up on that, is that a lot of these female student athletes are treating their social media presence as their resume for the real world. Because as my lovely 8th grade daughter, who is, you know, on part of a national championship soccer team and really good, you know, probably will play at a high level. She says, Dad, I know I'm going to go make more money being a doctor, a lawyer, or something else, instead of going to play on a professional soccer team. So a lot, and wisely so. And so if you can not only get paid while you're there as a student athlete to make some money from an NIL standpoint, and present a good social media brand, that just builds you, a brand's the right word, builds a brand that you can then take into the whole world and be very marketable from whatever career path you decide to choose.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So what, out of curiosity, actually let's get straight into valuation then, talking about that and valuations. How did you guys come up with your valuations for just not just the women's, but just overall? How are you guys doing the valuation stuff? And a little bit about and why is Snapchat not involved? Because Sydney McKinney gets 600,000 Snapchat views every 28 days. So I just want to throw that one out.
One, I think that it's an ever evolving algorithm, and I think YouTube's going to is something certainly that's going to be part of it moving forward. And it certainly needs to be, especially now that there's handles on going to be a part of YouTube. Right. So it's just part of from our studies. We've determined that TikTok, Twitter, and then Instagram, those are the three, with Instagram being the highest, having the most influence from a brand standpoint, from going out and trying to do a deal with an advertiser standpoint. But so yes, the On3 NIL valuation, it is it's a proprietary algorithm that we've been tweaking and working on for a year, and continue to tweak and work on, that calculates an athlete's NIL value using dynamic data points with three categories: performance, influence, and exposure. And performance obviously is, how you do on the field or on the court. That matters. I mean, if you're a All-America softball player, you're going to be able to command more money than the walk-on softball player. Sure. Or if you're you guys mentioned the USC starting quarterback. He's going to be able to generate probably more because of where he's playing at and how he usually does. So then influence that goes into the social media aspect, and let's be honest, that's their resume, their calling card, their business card. So if you have a good social media following, you can utilize those and create a good influence. And exposures is the aspect where, depending on where your program's at and how good the program is. So, for example, our in-state schools, KU, K-State, or in Wichita State, they're not going to generate as much exposure as, say, Alabama, a Georgia, a USC.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So there's all those types of things, and media appearances all play into it. So it is a very complicated formula that they work on every single day, and as we as a company, and that we're taking it a step further, where athletes are going to be able to look and coming up here in December, athletes are going to be able to verify on their private dashboards and look even further under the hood into what makes their valuation what it is, and also potentially ways that they can increase their valuation. So, is it the perfect system? Sure. I mean, probably not, but we certainly feel like it is the industry standard now.
Yeah, for sure. That's what I was going to say. But it is the standard.
Yeah.
And we talk to people, we talk to athletic officials, we talk to coaches, we talk to student athletes, we talk to brands, we talk to agents. They're all using this now, this On3 NIL valuation as kind of the baseline for them to help figure out how to navigate this. But then there's also, we have a thing called the proposed value. For example, you can determine, help you as a student athlete determine, well, this is what the market kind of looks like. I should be charging $2,300 for a Instagram post, or less or more. So there's all those types of things, but the base foundation of the valuation is your performance, your influence, and your exposure, and that helps us come up with the valuations number.
That's awesome. And that, so that I mean, from it being a standard standpoint, like that's the first thing that Brad and I, he texted me about was when that came out. He's like, "Hey, check this out. Now we got to figure out how to get some of the athletes we work with on this, because that means that I think it also kind of solidifies that if we're able to help them get to that point where they can make a list like that, then that solidifies that they're doing what they need to do to really showcase their name, image, and likeness.
We're helping them out to get there.
Definitely. Sure. And we're further breaking it out as we go into individual sports. If you dig deep enough underneath the hood, you can find that there's a NIL listing ranking for women's soccer, tennis, golf, softball, volleyball, all those types of things, and obviously on the men's side too. So that just gives this, having that foundation and knowing as a student athlete in Wichita, being able to say, I can do this, but I can compare. I can compare myself to somebody that's similar from a success standpoint, but also from a similar program standpoint, and they're charging this. Maybe I should be charging more, or gosh, no wonder no one wants to do deals with me because I want to charge too much. So it kind of helps level the playing field a little bit. And I think that's one thing we're really pushing forward toward in the future, is to try to find ways that we can further empower student athletes to be successful in this NIL space.
Yep.
So tell us a little bit about, because I as I peruse the site and see some stuff, but you guys have like a was it like NIL 101 or
NILU.
Some type of NILU. There it is. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about that and what the goal behind that is, and how people can find it, I guess I would say.
Yeah, no, you can just log on to on3.com/NIL, and up there up the top it's called NILU. And yes, it's a program, and Grant Firking is actually one of the most ingenious people that I've ever met, even though he is still a football player at the University of Tennessee. He is a student athlete on the Tennessee football roster who is easily one of the most influential people in the NIL space. He is millionaire as a college kid, just from creating his own businesses, a lawn services business, and now we've got him working with us, and he goes and talks to people when it's not football season. Of course, Tennessee's going a little bit further than what they have in the past.
Yeah, he's not going to be available for a while.
But he's still actively involved, talking with student athletes and giving them the resources, and we put things up there for anybody, to be honest, whether it's the rules in your state from a state legislative standpoint or from a high school standpoint. We've got everything to kind of help student athletes to begin to understand how they can maximize their deals. But the education standpoint, again, I think it's going to be something very forward facing for us in the next year, because we certainly want to do everything we can to further and again empower these student athletes to do what they can do to make money off of their name and image and likeness.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, I'll say that's been one of the interesting pieces for us is. And we've got we've got a group of leaders at Wichita State, athlete leaders that kind of help us, and what we've realized so far is that even though they're starting to understand name, image, and likeness, not a lot of them really understand name, image, and likeness and how to get theirs out there. Like there's a few of them that they really get it and they understand, man, if I do these things, I'm going to be able to get these deals. But there's a lot of them that, you sit there and you're like, hey, you guys need to make these posts. It's not about you getting paid every time you make a post. It's about, hey, you need to make these posts and you need to do this. And they're still figuring that piece of it out.
Yep.
Yeah. Education is essential through this whole thing.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be honest. I mean, there's also the tax component. I've written a lot about the tax component with these. I had an SEC head coach tell me that he had on whatever day tax day is in April, walk into his office and tears, and the star player didn't realize he was supposed to keep all these 1099s, and he had thrown them all away, and he was worried he was about to be turned get in trouble with IRS. And granted, somebody will probably get in trouble by the IRS, but that might be more the people that are doing the 50C3 collectives. That's a whole nother.
Don't get us started on that piece. We have an attorney who steers us in certain directions, and being a nonprofit was not a direction he steered us in.
Yep.
Yeah.
He said,
smart attorney.
Well, do not.
He said, do not.
Education's got to be a huge part of this movement for everybody, for the folks that are running the collectives like you, for the compliance, for the coaches, for the other boosters, but most importantly for the student athletes. They have to understand the world they're getting into, and that's kind of what NILU is about. But certainly going to be even more as we move forward.
We had a so Christy Dosh, who does the business of college sport. Christy's one of our advisory board members, and
she's on our board.
And they have a group of collectives that get together and meet regularly, and they'll bring in speakers. Our speaker that's coming in this next go round actually is talking about
it's an immigration lawyer.
It's an immigration lawyer that's talking about work visas. Athletes being able to get work visas so they can get paid on NIL. So we have some good stuff that comes in. But one of the attorneys that we had in was specialized in a lot of employment law and a lot of those kind of things, and understood NIL, and they represent some people in the NIL space. And as we started, one of the questions that we got asked by some athletic directors specifically related to the 1099 stuff, and what are you going to do to protect the athletes and make sure that they understand that? And obviously education is a piece of that. But one of the things that comes up in the conversation as well is withholding some of their money to pay that when the time comes, right? So, hey, would you like us to withhold 20% of every deal back to pay it when the times come? And so those were conversations we had, and I think there's some collectives that are doing that. But this attorney that was on there basically said, don't. Like she said, you're setting yourself up for other potential legal issues by withholding taxes or money back for taxes for a 1099 employee, because that completely defeats how that whole process works on a federal level. And so so it's interesting when you dive in and start going the education piece, not just for athletes, but even the collectives is becoming, I think, bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
I started my career wanting to write about college sports and college football. I never thought I'd have to learn a little bit about tax code. I spent I spent a lot of time researching a couple stories earlier this summer about the collectives that are going down the 501c3 route, and why that could be lead to some potential pitfalls. And the IRS's website's very cumbersome. But you do, if you're getting involved in this NIL space, you have to be kind of a jack of all trades, and that's something as you guys as collective operators probably understand better than anybody.
Yeah. Well, I think the other thing too, back to your point of, not just the state laws and the taxes and all of those kind of things, but the other piece that we ran into, Brad's initial idea was for us to be able to utilize athletes to help raise money for nonprofits. So with the idea that it was more of a royalty based payment, right? So the athlete could promote the nonprofit as much as they want, and they would get a percentage of all the money raised for that nonprofit. A lot of people love the idea. This is great. Our attorney said, "Hey, hold up. I'm not saying we're not going to be able to get to that point,
right?
But Kansas has professional fundraiser laws that deal with all of that, and so people never consider." Those kind of laws as well, even outside of the tax stuff. Like, hey, is there a law on professional fundraising that could prevent this from happening? So,
and then you touched on fair market value. And that's even more of a priority if you're going to represent a charity. So there's it's a tangled web that NIL has weaved.
We are very thankful for Sam Feather at Goodell Stratton.
Yeah, Sam Feather, Goodell Stratton. In Topeka, Kansas. Great attorney. I do find it interesting too, and then we'll get to Brad's random questions. But I think it's cool seeing your guys' first women's rankings come out or values come out.
Sure.
That the top two are. If you go to people and you say, "What do you watch in college sports?"
Yeah.
And they say football and basketball. Okay, well, what do you watch in women's college sports? Well, I watch OU softball.
Yeah.
I watch Connecticut basketball. Like
right.
that, you don't hear people say, "I watch gymnastics."
Yeah.
And granted, they're USA gymnasts, but I think it's awesome, and I think what that does is it shows athletes, especially a lot of the female athletes, that hey, look, it doesn't matter what sport you're in, you have the ability to benefit off your name, image, and likeness.
You're right. You're right. And granted, the list is made. Our NIL 100 on the women's side is made up a ton of women basketball players, and the women basketball players do make up about 13% of the executed deals in year one of NIL. So certainly, women's college basketball is where it's at, and from an overall standpoint, but. I think you hit the nail on the head by looking at Livy Dunn, looking at Sunsi Lee in their success, and Livy's just outstanding from building a brand standpoint.
Yeah.
And then Suni from she's America's sweetheart from an Olympic standpoint. So deserves every opportunity to make every penny that she did for everything that she's done and what she's going to do here in 2024. So it's awesome. And it does show that anybody, and we see deals in women's track and field. We see women's soccer players making deals. We see it every sport. So there is opportunity out there. Businesses are interested in doing the brands, and it's not just going to be the Nikes and the Adidas. It's going to be the Pizza Ranch in Wichita that is interested in doing deals because it can, because of what we talked about earlier with some of the social brand standpoint, they can drive traffic and generate business for those companies.
Well, and the thing the businesses I think are starting to understand and realize, and it's how we're marketing to people, is to get entry level into advertising in college sports is not cheap, right? So if I want to go to the local college, if I want to go to KU or K-State or Wichita State or any other college and say, hey, man, I'd love to advertise my business and do some sponsorship here, that entry level point is not cheap. And so most small businesses especially can't afford that.
Right.
And so that's the benefit that we have found with working with the athletes on NIL stuff is that entry level is so much smaller now, right? For a few $100s, you can have some athletes promoting some stuff for you, and it's opening the world up on that. So I'm waiting for the backlash from Haley Cavender.
Right.
Because Hannah is valued at $1,000 more. So I'm waiting for you guys to get backlash on that.
How do you, what has happened that one is 831 or whatever, and the other's only 830.
That probably just comes into one has a few more social media followers than the other.
Yeah.
So
not on mine. I see them together all the time.
Yeah, my valuation.
And certainly as they as they go through the season here, I have a feeling one's performance is going to be a little bit better than the other. And that certainly
that's interesting.
But how about you hit the nail on the head though on getting into the local market, because local markets of these schools. I go back and I still remember one of the best early on NIL commercials was Deuce Vaughn and the porta potty, the cat cans commercial.
Yes.
Everybody knows
Yeah.
about cat cans now because of Deuce Vaughn and that commercial. And up in Nebraska, DeForest Coldest did something with an air conditioning company. There's
I
other
saw that,
ones
yeah.
all across
what's his
the
last
country.
name? It's like Cold something. DeForest, like Coldston. And so they used his name, and it's an air conditioning company. It's hilarious. It's awesome.
So it's it opens up those doors. Opens the Coldest. Crawford. I knew I said I screwed up the last name, but yes, it does open up the door for you guys for local advertisers. Just so right on that to get in and build into the markets like a Nebraska, Kansas State, Wichita State that just might never ever be able to get to before.
Right.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Amazing.
Well, we could sit here all day and talk about it. I know you got stuff to do, and we've taken a bunch of your time already. But I want to share my amazing commercial idea with Pizza Ranch. Do you know who Avery Johnson is?
Oh yes. Yes,
so Avery Johnson from Mays, which we were talking with Pizza Ranch the other day, and I told the guy, I said, how cool would it be for you guys to do something with Avery Johnson where he walks into the Pizza Ranch in Wichita, which is right by Mays, actually, and he walks in and sits down to eat, and he walks out of the Pizza Ranch in Manhattan, which is where he's going to school at K-State. And so it's those things that you can think of now that I don't think you could have before with athletes. So
and you can film those things with an iPhone.
Oh, yeah.
Today.
So that's amazing.
Well, we're going to jump into our last segment here, which we like to do with all of our guests just because it gets off the topic and changes it with that. So Brad has some random questions here to ask you. So good luck with whatever he asks.
Okay.
All right. So here's the first one. If you had someone following you around all the time, what would you have them do for you so you didn't have to?
Ooh.
Sit on podcast.
No. Help taxi my kids around to practices. With three. That's all my wife and I do. We don't eat dinner at night until 9 o'clock at night because we're taxiing our daughters around to soccer practices. Granted, with an 8th grader, a 9th grader, and a senior, there's going to be time here in the very near future where we're going to be begging for those times. So I complain about that, but
it goes quick.
I get it, man. Okay, so here's the next one. Who'd play you in a movie?
Ooh.
A movie about Jeremy Crabtree. Who'd play you?
Yikes! Somebody short and fat.
Wait a minute. I'm not a movie star. I don't know what he's talking about.
Chad's not available.
Oh, I've never ever thought of that in my life, and I can't even begin to think about that.
Joe Pesci.
Joe Pesci.
Oh well, I'm not that funny. So
there you go.
I'm just glad.
But you could be like George Clooney. I want George Clooney.
Sure. Why not? Why not?
I'm just glad he didn't go for the trifecta with me, like somebody short, fat, and balding. I'm glad he didn't do the trifecta.
There you go.
Well, that's it. I tell everybody I used to have a lot of hair until my daughters turned to teenagers.
Oh, goodness sakes. I have 5 daughters. You said you have 4. I have 5. And
bless you.
Christmas. Hey, can I go over to so-and-so's house? I said, that sounded like a male name. So no.
Not happening. Not happening.
So
it's always
anyway, so what's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Wow. Be kind to people. That's one thing that my parents instilled into me from day one is to be kind and be thoughtful to and considerate of others, because you just never what these people are going through, what their day's been, and saying thank you, please, smiling can really just even turn somebody's day around. So that's something that I've really worked hard to try to instill into my kids. I hope they've been paying attention, and certainly it's been a part of what I am all along my life, is just to try to be kind and smile more and be polite.
I love hearing that, because when my background is as a paramedic, I have a sports degree, but then I was a paramedic by trade as well. And when I was an EMS director, I had 3 rules: show up to work on time, do your job right, and be nice.
Yeah.
Right.
Just be nice.
Right. I love it. Okay, so if you had to teach a class on one thing, what would you teach?
Well, I've thought about this, to be honest. I really thought long and hard. I would
start
love
a new career right here.
Yeah, no, I mean, I would love to get into to working with in the sports journalism world and working with young journalists of tomorrow, because as we know, it's a dying field. We know that journalism has been vilified, rightly or wrongly, through the last decade or so. But there is still a need for great stories to be told, and especially in the sports world. And I feel like sports is that one thing that can make everybody happy, and it's the one thing that brings communities together. It's the one thing that breaks down socioeconomic barriers. It tears down all of those things, and we are losing a generation right now where those stories aren't going to be told. And so it's something I certainly thought about. I mean, certainly, I love what I do. I've been doing it for a long time, and the people at On3 are absolutely amazing and have zero plans of going anywhere. But 10, 20 years down the road, certainly would love to do it, especially because now you have to be a little bit of everything. You have to be able to do writing. You have to be able to do a podcast. You have to be in front of a camera. I mean, that was one of the I loved working at KNBC 9 News in Kansas City because I got to do everything. I got to write. I got to tweet. I got to post on Facebook. I had to write breaking news. I had to. Oh yeah, they need you to go do a Facebook Live, or need you to help do something on camera. So there's just lots of little things, and I think that we're not going to have those opportunities to tell those stories moving forward, because it's so many people are gravitating away from journalism, but more specifically sports journalism.
Interesting. Yeah. And so up in your neck of the woods, actually, I don't know if you know her or not. She's a big journalist, Brenda Van Langen, who does a lot of the, women's basketball. She calls a lot of games and stuff. Well, she's, speaking of telling good stories, and we talked to her the other day, and so I'm just going to give her a little bit of a shameless plug here, but she's been working on a women's basketball that kind of ties into Title IX, but also going back and looking at, even when Title IX started, there was still a lot of pushback, and there was a lot of stories that no one heard, especially pre-internet and different stuff, that, like, if you weren't right in that geographical region, you didn't realize the amazing things that were happening. And so she's starting up this show called, or not a show, well, it's multiple episodes. So it's kind of a mini-series type thing, but it's called If Not For Them. And that's what it's about, is how these women today who are on your top 100 women's valuation stuff, they kind of are standing on the backs of some giants, that paved the way and that didn't get a dime, So I think you're right about that thought process of telling a good story is still valuable.
Do you find, just a curiosity since you hit on that, do you find it more difficult today with social media and the internet the way it is and all of that now, that, like, do you feel like there's more pressure on you to when you identify a story or hear of something, to get it out as quickly as possible, because if you don't, somebody else is?
Yes and no. I mean, I've always believed in the mantra, better right than first.
Good.
And that's something that even going back to working in a newsroom like it in KNBC 9 News, you want to be first as much more than the other guys, but you also want to be right as more than the other guys. So that's something that I've always subscribed to. I'd rather tell a better story and be complete with details than being first and scant with details, or potentially having incorrect details. But there is pressure. I mean, there is intense pressure, especially in the recruiting world that I'd lived in for so long. It was so important to be first and have the stories.
Who has the scoop? Right.
But it's hard. It's complex. But again, just you want to be first if you can be, but you certainly want to be right more than the others, guys.
There you go.
Absolutely.
All right.
Last one.
Yeah, and here's one of our favorite ones. If there was a sandwich named after you, okay, what would be on it? What would be on the Jeremy?
What would be on the Crabtree?
Well, yeah.
The Krabby, actually, because that's been my nickname since high school.
There you go. So what's on the Krabby?
Well, you would think crab, right? But no,
nope, not on a sandwich.
Yeah.
I'm literally like, I'm a very, give me as many different types of meats as you can probably tell, as many different types of meats as meats and cheeses as you can. So certainly roast beef, throw some bacon on there. I like some good ham, some good turkey. I mean, which sounds like a very typical sandwich now, but I love pepper jack and cheese and throw some barbecue sauce on it. So there you go.
Yep.
You're pepper jack cheese is our jam. So
well, Jeremy, what did we miss? What did we not hit that you wanted to cover? Or?
No, I think I love one. I think it's amazing with what you guys are doing down there with supporting Wichita State student athletes. You certainly are one of the first in the industry to do that. And I mean, there's very few out there that do it. I think there's maybe 2 or 3 that are just focused entirely on female student athletes. I love what you guys are doing, and I think it's a very savvy pivot. So certainly very curious to see moving forward how success goes and what you guys do to continue to have some success, because it certainly looks like it is started off with a bang.
Right.
Yeah, it's been fun. That's for sure.
And we will get someone on that top 100 list. I'm telling you.
That's the goal.
We're both so competitive.
That's the goal.
How do we're getting someone on there.
Yeah.
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 Well, I mean, and the good news about it, it's updated every single week.
There we go.
It's updated, with new social media numbers every single time, and performances and seasons. So we'll certainly see some ebb and flow here now that we're in basketball season, and we saw some ebb and flow, late in the volleyball season. We've seen some. Obviously, we're in the NCAA tournament time for soccer. We'll certainly see a lot for softball coming forward. I think softball, as you guys know, Wichita State, but also with that Oklahoma and Oklahoma State markets, there's a rabid fan base where businesses are lining up to do deals with those female student athletes, deservedly so. So there's some. So it's a long answer saying there's certainly some opportunity to move into the list here.
Oh, absolutely.
Love it.
We're hoping on that. So, well, we appreciate you being with us today, and congrats on all the success with On3. I mean, your history was great to hear, and I think it's the On3 and the NIL is the right place, and I enjoy reading the stuff that you put out, and I enjoy perusing that, and we're just honestly, with this still being a year and a half into the NIL stuff and us diving into it, we just enjoy it. Like, we just enjoy the athletes that we work with. They're just so cool to talk to and get to know. And so I think what you're doing working in NIL and the stuff you're doing on On3 is great and definitely fun.
Yep.
Thank you. It's certainly a fire hose of information. There's so much, whether it's their deals being reported to trends, and then that's where we're kind of walking that fine line of being able to cover deals and report on things that are newsworthy from a deal standpoint, but then also covering the trend stuff like we did this week with the transfer portal and whatever about today, how NIL is impacting the coaching carousel. So it's a fine line trying to make sure we do it all, but then also working with product advancement. But I'm having an absolute blast and love it. It's introducing me to new people like you guys, and it's fun to see that for as much angst that the NIL initially created, it's also created so many great opportunities for all these student athletes, and excitingly so, we're seeing it on the female side now.
Well, and I hope we get to meet face to face sometime down in Wichita, because your daughter
certainly will be down there.
Yeah.
My daughter signing at Newman. I have a feeling we're going to be down in Wichita for some soccer games coming up here pretty soon.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So tell everybody where they can find you out on Twitter.
Well, as long as Twitter's still around.
I know, that's crazy, isn't it? I saw that today.
Do you have your other social media too? So tell them wherever.
Actually, Twitter's been so sports centric that's been kind of everybody's focus over the. But the easiest way to find me, you go to on3.com, and I'm usually front and center there. You can go to on3.com/NIL. Then you also certainly can find me on Twitter. Knock on wood, that won't go anywhere. And it's at Jeremy Crabtree on Twitter, just as it's spelled.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, Jeremy, thanks again for being here. Jeremy Crabtree, On3 senior editor, our guest today. We appreciate it, and we'll be seeing you in the future, I'm sure.
All
right, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeremy. All right. Well, what'd you think of that? Let's follow that one up. I thought that was awesome, dude.
Gee, many Christmas. There's, he made the statement that drinking from the fire hose or it's like a fire hose.
Yeah.
Because that's how NIL has been. It's just like, oh, okay, well, let's do this, and it's just like all this information just smacking you in the face with, oh man, okay, well, and he's definitely got his pulse on how NIL's going. Like you said, he's looking at those trends with the transfer portal, looking at those trends with coaches looking to move jobs based on,
absolutely.
Hey, you know what? I love this school, but man, if I go over here, I have the same stuff.
Yeah.
Plus NIL money.
I think that's already factored in though too, right? Like I think part of the reason Lincoln Riley went from OU to USC was because there is a ton. I don't care how many wealthy people support OU.
Right.
You're talking LA.
Yeah.
Like there's a ton of wealth in
is
LA.
It the largest market
and
in the
it's huge.
I
mean, or New York, one of the two.
Yeah, and then Houston's up there, Dallas is up there.
But gosh, if you had to choose between, Southern California or New York, I'm going Southern California for the weather.
Well, I don't know.
The weather. That's it. It's only weather.
There you go.
I could talk all day about it, but
I'm going to choose the Wichita market.
Yeah, there we go. I'm in that one. I could talk all day on this stuff. That was fun, and I enjoyed it, and we appreciate Jeremy for being on here. So once again, want to give a shout-out to Eastus Media and Cody Eastus with his podcast studio for letting us do our podcast over here. We appreciate that from Cody. Definitely something that makes it a lot easier for us. So shout out to him, and shameless plug here for the Lady Shock Squad. This is the one that we have up going currently. So check us out, ladyshocksquad.com. Support the female athletes there.
How many athletes we up to now?
We've got 17 more to add. So we've got 27 athletes. We've got 27 athletes that, wait, my math's off.
25. 8 plus 17.
8, yeah. See, there you go, 25.
There we go.
25 athletes, and then we're getting ready to add some individual ones as well. So check us out, ladyshocksquad.com. We've enjoyed today. We had a great time. Don't forget to listen to future podcasts and check us in on any of those kind of things.
Yeah,
so
amazing.
Good time today. So for Brad, I'm Chad. We appreciate you guys joining us today. Check us out on the next Paladin Strategies podcast. Have a good day.
See ya.